Welcome to Remembering the Forgotten, a space where leaders think out loud without polish or performance. No scripts, no personas, just what becomes audible when the noise drops and the mind is free to speak for itself. These conversations are not about delivering insight. They are about thinking together in real time, testing ideas against stillness, letting two open minds stretch each other. The intention is simple: to create a space where clarity can emerge and where listeners don't just consume perspectives, but feel permission to engage their own thinking more honestly. Today, I'm joined by Keith Lubner. Keith has spent decades close to the edge where selling becomes human again, where connections matters more than technique and clarity matters more than pressure. What stands out isn't how much he knows about sales, but how deeply he understands people inside it. This isn't a conversation about frameworks, funnels, or scaling tactics. It's about what happens when performance stops being the point, when selling becomes a form of listening, and when trust with yourself and others replaces force. What matters here isn't strategy, it's presence. The kind that lets conversations land without strain and decisions emerge without coercion. With that, Keith, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Marcus. That probably is the best intro that I've ever heard on a podcast.
It is
It's
you,
so
right? In a
true.
nutshell.
Well, it's a great intro. And it really hits home to you know philosophically what and how I feel about selling. I mean, we all in one form or the other, we all are selling something,
Mhm.
our services, our products, you name it. Uh, and what we have complete control over is not that product or that service, but us. We
Mhm.
have complete control over who we are and
Mhm.
what we want to become. And so
Mhm.
that introduction was refresh was really refreshing because I didn't come on here to talk tactics. I could talk tactics all day long with everybody. I could give people frameworks for how to prospect better and how they can do all of that. But I really like to figure out with people, like, why are they doing what they're doing and why do they keep doing what they're doing when it comes to anything, selling, leadership, you name it. So really great introduction. That was fantastic.
Wonderful. Nice to hear. So before we begin, when I speak of coherence, I'm pointing to a state where nothing inside is in conflict. Body, thoughts, emotions, and action aligned, moving as one. No push, no urgency, no fear driving the moment. And when I speak of stillness, I don't mean silence. I mean the part of you untouched by expectation or performance. The place that knows before the mind tries to manage it. And that's the ground I'd like us to meet on today.
Mm, okay. There's a word that came to mind as soon as you were saying this, especially around the stillness and the coherence and the what's the word I'm looking for? Being one, if you will,
Mhm, mhm,
with
mhm,
yourself,
mhm,
and that is a it's a hyphenated word. And I use this a lot. I use this a lot actually when I coach a lot of people, and
mhm,
it's called non-negotiables.
mhm, mhm,
And what I mean by that is when you as an individual can figure out what your individual non-negotiables are, you have a tendency to come to peace with yourself. You come to terms with yourself. The stillness that you had mentioned there, if you will, when you have certain non-negotiables, because you live by those non-negotiables. Nothing changes with those non-negotiables. You don't pivot off those non-negotiables. You don't negotiate with those non-negotiables. It is how you live your life and how you want to live your life and how you want to be in your profession, whatever profession that is. And it's I call it like your North Star. It's the direction you're going to take yourself in. And when you have that, you have a calmness around yourself. You have a peace around yourself. You have direction. And here's the really interesting thing. You're more productive.
Oh, yeah.
You produce more. You
Yep.
you realize more in all aspects, business, personal, you name it. You get more. It's when I see people out of whack, when they don't have that peace. They're doing things for the wrong reasons. They pivot off of what they think are important things. They don't even know what those important things are. And invariably they burn out, or invariably they're not happy. And so it's really interesting. Like the stillness, I equate to like a peace within yourself, professionally and personally. It's kind of interesting, actually.
It's beautiful. So, Keith, speaking of stillness, where can you just be yourself, untouched by expectations or performance?
Wow, that is all right. So there's a couple ways I myself, right? Uh, it's interesting. There's physical places and there's not physical places, right?
Okay.
So this is a really deep question, actually, Marcus. When I think about it, I have.
Are you surprised?
I am surprised. I think I wasn't expecting a question like this. I'm like, oh my goodness gracious. So physically, I call it my happy place, right? And I think everybody has to have that escape or that happy place where they know they can go there, and everything kind of like just is pushed off to the side. Life is pushed off to the side, and life is not easy for anybody. I don't know one person in this entire world that life was ever easy for them in one way or another. There's different dimensions of all of that, and I mean, I can go into my story, and it's long, and it's there's some really deep, difficult things that happened. But physically, where I'm myself, it's I'm sitting at the beach. I'm sitting by the water. And I don't have to be doing anything. I'm just sitting by the water, or I'm walking by the water, and it's that connection with nature, and it takes me away from everything. Now, that's physically. Now, what's interesting is when I'm physically not there, and I'm having and we all have these difficult days every now and then. I will actually visualize sitting on the beach, right? I'll visualize being there. In fact, I have in my office, I have, the beach is my happy place. I have a little, my family got it for me one year, and I'll look at that and I'll visualize, and it will completely change whatever mood I'm in, right? Whatever is happening there, whatever stress of the day is presenting itself, it'll take me there. So physically, if I'm there, that's great, but mentally I can put myself in that spot so that I get, more clarity. I get still, I get peaceful, I'm not as emotionally charged at that moment. I don't let the disruptive emotions get a hold of me. I mean, call it a form of meditation, call it what you will. It's just it's a trigger or a technique that I used many, many years ago to put myself into that spot there.
Which is very fascinating because, I listened carefully to you, and you mentioned a few things that basically determine whether there is stillness or not. And one aspect of stillness is you probably would almost have used your hands, pushed the noise
Yeah.
outside, right?
Yeah.
So if you think about that, so you can be in a meeting and you suddenly realize noise is coming, pressure from outside is coming. So you can basically probably not even have to close your eyes anymore, but you can just picture that beach. Does it really happen?
It does, and there's a couple ways I actually do that. It's yeah, and you're right. If you're in a meeting, a big meeting, small meeting, whatever the meeting is, and you close your eyes and you start to people, that's a little strange in the meeting. Let's be real.
You shouldn't
Okay,
do it for too long.
you should do exactly, but you can mentally kind of put yourself there. And what I do is I do this even before the meeting starts.
Mhm, mhm,
Right. So what I do is I prepare for the meeting, which is what everybody should do in every meeting, and I'm an advocate for this. Now, I'm not getting into sales techniques. I'm just saying, when you prepare for something, you actually are giving yourself a couple different emotions, if you will. You're giving yourself the emotion of confidence, and if you give yourself the emotion of confidence, you can be calmer in a meeting. You can be more still in a meeting. You can control your emotions in a meeting if you are more confident. That comes from preparation. So as I roll into the meeting, as long as I've prepared myself, I can very easily, if it gets to be a difficult meeting, move myself into that happy place because I've prepared myself into that meeting. Now, years ago, that wasn't the case. Years ago, I would sometimes, I'm human, I would sometimes go into meetings and I would wing it, as they say. It would be like a pickup game, and sometimes it would be an excellent meeting. It would be a brilliant meeting, and other times the meetings would go sideways, and I also went sideways. My emotions went sideways. How I handled the meeting went sideways, and I recognized that this can't go on and on. I better prepare better for the meeting so that I can just handle me better in the meeting. Let
That is
alone
such
like
an
the meeting.
interesting aspect. So let's think about that for a moment. When you go out with your wife to friends, how much time do you prepare for that meeting?
Well, that none.
Exactly, right?
Right, none. But no, but I'm not fearful of a tension in something like that. I'm not fearful of what that meeting may be about. On the business side, I am fearful with that meeting because I'm thinking which direction is this meeting going to
Rightfully
go, and I want to
so.
prepare myself. Yeah,
Rightfully so.
yeah,
So basically, what I want to hint at is if we are just us, ourselves, right, and we meet friends, we don't need any preparation for that. We know how to be ourselves. And if people tell me, Marcus, the best thing is really go into a meeting and just wing it. I said, honest to God, I don't want to see that quality. So it is almost like an art form to understand that if I go in business, business is not personal, business is not private, as much as I am myself in it, I better prepare. It's a different world, right?
it is, and you're preparing, which is really think about it. You're preparing yourself to be yourself. And if you don't prepare, you are then not yourself in the meeting.
Because
So
you're taken out of focus because you suddenly have a curveball, for example, right? Or you
yes,
have to focus on something you're not aware of. But whereas you have been prepared, you can literally be yourself.
yes,
And I think
yes.
this is a deep truth which many people who listen to the show do not get.
Well, they don't, and this all goes down to self-awareness.
Hmm.
Right now, I'm
Hmm.
self-aware because I have 36 years of experience. Right,
Hmm.
I'm very self-aware these days. I've made a lot of mistakes over the course of my career, but I'm self-aware that I made those mistakes and I course
Hmm.
correct. Only because
Hmm.
I have 36 years of experience. I coach
Hmm.
some young individuals, a couple years out of college, and one of the things I tell them is after every meeting, just do a quick analysis of
Hmm.
how were you in the meeting? How did you
Yeah,
feel in the meeting? What do you want to improve in a meeting? And what I'm
I love
trying to
that.
do is I'm trying to get them to become, from a habitual perspective, self-aware of themselves,
Yeah,
so that they can adjust and become better over time. Not, oh, the meeting was great and we covered all these topics. Is, no, no, how did you feel in the meeting, in how you covered the topics, as an example? And were you
yeah,
you, or did you feel like you were trying to be your boss or trying to be somebody
yeah,
else that, quite frankly, you're not?
yeah. And I would say that is already an amazing start before we try to analyze the other person's reaction and then integrate that into our reflection, right?
Yeah,
Because the
yeah,
harder thing is the freaking know thyself.
yeah, yeah.
So here's a tricky question for you. But go ahead first.
No, I was going to say, like, knowing thyself, and I want to, interject here. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and the podcast was the podcast had Matthew McConaughey on it, the actor,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And it wasn't one of those podcasts where, hey, what movies are coming up, or what movie did you like the best, or anything
Hmm.
like that. It was really a deep podcast because
Hmm.
they the person was asking McConaughey what he's all about. And
Hmm.
people have this perception of him, and how he actually changed the course of his career because he was self-aware
Hmm.
of what he liked to do, and then he stayed true to that self-awareness.
Hmm.
And it was all about how to do that. Like, when you want to make a change into a different direction, how do you stay true to that? And one of his characteristics as a person is he's extraordinarily self-aware in moments of his life. And he peeled back, like, all the way through his life. He peeled back to a time when he was in Australia,
Hmm.
after right after high school, and he was
Hmm.
alone, and he was just examining, like, do I like this, and is this what I want to do at that moment, being, just maybe early 20s, if that. Very self-aware of that. So
Hmm.
when I heard that, it all, like, connected at that
Hmm.
moment, because I said that's like
Hmm.
a super trait of people. If you can be self-aware
Hmm.
of anything, you will succeed in anything if you're self-aware of what
I
you're
agree.
capable, what you're not capable of, what you want to do, what you don't want to do,
Yeah.
more importantly.
So why do you think that self-awareness is not taught at school nor at college?
I think because society has these expectations around everything out there. You need to be like this. You need to be like that. You need to, you know, as an example, you need to go to college, and I'm an advocate for college. Don't get me wrong here. I don't want your listeners to say, what's he saying there? But we have these expectations, and for some people, that's just not the path for
Mhm.
them. Go to college, go get a great job, go get a house, go do this, go do that. And all I'm saying is, just, like, if you really, really, really want to do that, that's okay. You're self-aware of that. But if you're not wanting to do that, you're setting yourself up for a life of misery. You can
Mhm.
make as much money in the world and still be absolutely depressed and miserable. And we read stories about people like this, Marcus, all
Mhm.
the time, that they have
Absolutely. Yeah.
all the money in the world. They're billionaires,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they're depressed, or God forbid they kill themselves.
Yeah.
And it's like, what direction do you want to take your life? Is what I think
Hmm.
is do you want to go in a happy direction, or in a self-aware
Hmm.
direction, or do you want to go in a direction where society dictates, because of the norms of society, the direction you should go?
Hmm. So you would say that self-awareness is one of the first keys in terms of finding out what you actually want and then to change direction, huh?
Yeah, yeah, and being honest with you. So you're self-aware, and you're honest
Hmm.
with yourself, and then to have the guts to
Hmm.
do something about it. And as I picked up from the McConaughey, podcast, I like listening to him talk, and I think he's a neat speaker and all that stuff. But
Yeah, he's
it
amazing.
was, it was having the guts to stay true to that, having the guts to change. Like he was set up early on as an actor, in rom-coms. And he was making a lot of money doing that. And he purposely said, I do not want to accept more of those roles. And I'm shortening this up a little bit, but I don't want to accept any of those roles anymore. I want to go in this direction. And he kept saying no to it. And he would take on films making less money on that. Now don't get me wrong. He wasn't hurting for money at this point,
enough,
right?
yeah.
But it's what he wanted to do. It was the self-awareness of, I want to go in that direction now. And then he had the guts to do something about it. Most people don't. Most people don't have the guts to do something about it. They're like, oh, I'd love to do that. And then they talk themselves out of it. And I don't mean like you have a family and you have young children and you want to go, learn guitar and become a musician or something like this and quit your job and do
go on tour.
You have to be responsible at things.
Yes, absolutely.
Responsibly self-aware is what you have to be, right? But being self-aware, because if you are happy doing something, everything, I've just learned this, everything else just falls into place.
It's interesting. So you mentioned you've been on that path for 35 years. When did you hit the time, Keith, when you realized you were living somebody else's script?
It was about 4 years into my career. And I started my career selling software. And I love the people around me and all that stuff, but I always had this inclination to want to have my own business. I just wasn't quite sure what that was. So I was self-aware that I did want to do that. But I'll never forget this moment. My wife and I were married about a year, and she turned to me at one point and said, "You are miserable. You're absolutely miserable in doing what you're doing." And basically, she was giving me, as I look back, like an ultimatum, like, you're miserable doing what you're doing. Do something about it. Because I don't know if we can survive this. And what was interesting is I knew I wanted to do something, but I didn't realize at that moment like what I was actually projecting to the people that I love in my life. And I was projecting this misery actually. And it was a moment where I just said, I got to change this up. I got to go in a different direction. I got to be more aware of this, because that was my life, and that was the most important part of my life. So that, again, was like a North Star of mine, right? A non-negotiable, like my family, non-negotiable. And it was literally within 6 months, I had made a move to another company and laid the groundwork for my first company within that time frame, and put myself on a path where probably not even 6 months after that, so it was less than a year after my wife had said this to me, that I'd start up my first company, and then it just started to take off at that point. And it was all because, I was self-aware, because she made me self-aware of what I was projecting at that moment there. That was, over 30-something years ago, and then the journey just kept, meandering and moving and going. But it was a valuable life lesson that I had to learn at that moment.
And I'm sure it took quite some courage for your wife, huh, back then.
It did. Well, if you know my wife, she's very direct and to the point. So she was probably just saying, "Hey, man, I'm going to go this way with or without you. I don't know." But it was the honesty of that, and it was like a slap on my face. It really was. It's and I'm very thankful for that when I look back on it, because it took me on this trajectory, a really nice trajectory, and on that trajectory I had numerous offers from like I had clients that would want to hire me as an employee
Hmm.
many, many, many times, and I said no to every single one of them
Hmm.
over the course. And I
Why
could
was
have
that?
well, I said no because my North Star was I wanted my life to be like a certain way. And I
Hmm.
wanted this balance in my life, and the family was part of that balance, and everything had to be in balance. If I got any
Hmm.
one of that out of balance, I was actually going back to that moment where my wife probably, you know, slapped me in the face with that statement,
Hmm.
right? I knew
Hmm.
that the balance was really important. I'd have, Marks, I had to have equilibrium in the different parts of
Hmm.
my life. Because I didn't
Hmm.
grow up that way. I grew up with, my equilibrium was not equilibrium. It was completely out of
Hmm.
whack. So I knew that's
Hmm.
what I wanted. That was the North Star. So I had these
Hmm.
job offers that I could have made a lot of money. Some of them would require me to relocate and all that stuff. And I said no to every single one of them. And
Hmm.
every time I said no, something good happened on the backside of it
Hmm.
with my business. Every single time.
Hmm.
Every single time. And I just realized, like, this is where I need to be the entire
Hmm.
time.
So basically, your wife's honesty kind of saved you, huh?
Well, yeah, and that's what we need in our lives. We need people
Hmm.
to to, to how do I say this? To pleasantly be honest with us around
Hmm.
things, not harshly be honest with it. We have people. I coach clients a lot of times, and bosses are like, "Oh, I'm honest with them," and I'm like, "Yeah, you're pretty harsh with them, right?
Hmm.
They're people, and you don't know what
Hmm.
they're going through, but so you have to understand what they're going through, and then you can be honest with them, and you can help them. I mean, that's your number one mission as a leader, is to put people in a position to win, right? It's not for
Hmm.
you, it's for them. And
Hmm.
it's having those people that could tell you things like that. It's sometimes it's a spouse. My children are now older. They're 30, 28, and 24.
Hmm.
My children now give me honest feedback about
Hmm.
things,
Hmm.
which it's such an interesting part of, like, as you evolve as a parent. I am their parent, but yet I'm starting to see them more like a peer almost, which is
Hmm.
really
Hmm.
interesting. And they could give me feedback, Dad, I saw you do this, or Dad, this, and
Hmm.
you can listen to them. I mean, friends could say,
Hmm.
why'd you do that? And as long as you know that it's coming from a place of goodwill, I think we all need that, quite frankly. And I
You
don't
know
think
what's
we all have
interesting?
that.
Exactly. I mean, that's what I really want to spend a little bit time on. I know for a fact that many people listen who are the ones in the situation itself to my show, but many spouses and partners of those people listen to it as well. So I highly, highly, um, recommend to really do what Keith's wife has done with him. When you see things, speak them out. Because quite often, whether it's a man or it's a woman in this situation, they simply do not see it,
No,
right? That's the
no.
thing. And they might even pretend to be happy, but they're not. They might even put up, I assume, when did you have kids already at that time?
Yes, my for yes, we did. My son was
Okay,
born.
so
Yeah,
that would
yeah,
have been the classic to put up a good face for the family so
yeah,
nobody really pays attention to how miserable you are.
yeah,
So I believe it takes courage for a partner to really speak out and say, honey, in all honesty and in all love, I need to mirror something, you know? Or if you don't have the courage to speak it out, ask a question
yeah,
like, honey, how are you really doing? You know? Because I
yeah,
believe exactly as you said it, this is something that's so missing, those mirrors today. I remember when I was teaching, I had one exercise, and as you can imagine, Keith, out of 14 people, maybe one or one and a half picked it up seriously.
Okay.
And I said to them, create three questions. The one was, for example, why do you like spending time with me? Another one would be, what makes me special? Like, give it some thought, just be creative and ask a person honestly to answer. And ask people who really you believe that they will be positive with you because you don't need to be to meet someone who pulls you down, right?
Yeah.
So that one woman took it to the extreme. She had 100 guests where she was a maid of honor at the wedding, and she printed a questionnaire, a quiz, and handed it to all the guests.
Oh my
Guess what
goodness.
happened? She received a plethora of mirrors, took all the answers, put them on a huge board, studied that stuff every morning when she got up and every night before she went to sleep. Keith, after 2 weeks, I did not recognize that woman anymore.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Because real self awareness will have consequences,
Yes.
right?
Yes. And you have to be
It,
willing to
yes,
you have to be willing to know that they're going to have consequences. You have to be willing to accept those. Right?
I can
It's
tell
one thing.
you. Go ahead, please.
I was going to say it's one thing to be self-aware of it. It's a whole other thing to be self-aware and then do something about it.
Absolutely. I can tell you, one guy asked me, Marcus, what is the price of working with you? And it wasn't money. And that's exactly it.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. The price is not money that people fear. They find the money. They're afraid of what comes out when they start looking into the mirror. And I
Yes.
know this is something you and I have in common. So I'm soon coming to the end, but this is one question which I really am curious about. When you are in stillness, what can pull you out of it? And what helps you, especially to come back to it again? Because I'm sure many feel themselves exactly here.
All right, so when I'm in stillness, what brings me out of that stillness?
Yes.
What brings me out of that?
Yeah, basically, what kind of distortions are here? Because, basically what I want to show is that you're a human being. You're not constantly in stillness, that somebody else realizes, he has these issues that actually take him out of stillness. And then what I'm more interested in, what helps you then to go back into stillness?
Okay, yeah, the big now I understand it. The biggest thing that brings me out of stillness is one that helps me get back into stillness at the same time. It's the same
That's
thing.
interesting.
It's the same
Okay.
thing, and it's fear.
Oh.
Yeah, I have. In fact, I had this conversation with my wife the other day, actually, and I've always had this fear of failure,
Okay.
and this fear around money and failing
Uh-huh.
around money,
Uh-huh.
and this fear, and it goes back to my childhood, and
Mhm.
my parents, for different reasons, they were divorced and everything, each had to
Mhm.
claim bankruptcy, and my brother had to claim bankruptcy. So as you can imagine, as a as a kid growing up, that fear was just, you know deeply embedded
Mhm.
in me. And
Mhm.
the thing is, I recognize it now. It's a
Mhm.
good thing and it's a bad thing for me. It's a good thing that it keeps me sharp, right, and
Mhm.
keeps me focused. It's a bad thing when I start to obsess over it,
Mhm.
and I will obsess sometimes over fearing all these things that could happen. And at this point of my career and my life, they're not going to happen. I still fear it happening, and it
Mhm.
causes me not to go into stillness because I get anxious. And if I get
Mhm.
anxious, I need to go do things about it, and I'm
Mhm.
not calm and cool and collected. So
Mm-hmm.
the fear drives me to understand that I need to be calmer, cooler,
Mm-hmm.
more
Mm-hmm.
collected because I think better that way. And if I do that, I'm actually tamping down that fear. So
Mm-hmm.
it works both ways, which is really
Mm-hmm.
strange.
Mm-hmm.
The
But it
interesting
makes
thing, Martin,
sense.
is I'm self-aware of it. Like I know
Mm-hmm.
I act certain ways because of that. And I said it to my wife out loud just the other day. Actually, I
Mm-hmm.
said, "This is coming from a place of I'm afraid because of these things."
Mm-hmm.
And the nice thing is, years ago, I would not have been able to say that out loud to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I now can do that, and I know it, and I'm aware of it,
Congratulations.
and then I can move myself into what you said, like the
Yeah.
stillness or the calmness,
Yeah.
or I meditate. I sit there and I'll meditate, or I'll do yoga, and it'll
Yeah.
bring me back over, so that I can manage it. I can't get rid of it. It's always going to be with me, but I can
Yeah.
manage it better than I did years and years and
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah. And I believe that is the key to really understand, gosh, we're humans.
Yeah.
Those fears are literally like birds who will always fly around us, but we can prevent them from actually building a nest and taking home on our heads, right?
It's a good way of putting it. I mean, what I say to myself is, I'll say something like, if I'm feeling these feelings and I'm having these thoughts, I'll say something like, "Welcome to the party."
That's
I'll just say,
amazing.
"Welcome to the party," because they'll be swirling around, and I'm not
Yes.
trying to knock them down or because then I'll get anxious and get frustrated and all
Yeah.
that. I'm like,
Yeah.
because you can't get rid of it. It's there. Like you can't get rid of feelings.
Right.
Feelings are you can't get rid of emotions. Emotions are part of the human existence. So you
Yeah.
just say, "Welcome to the party. I'm feeling fear right now. Welcome to the party." And
Yeah.
it's almost like an acceptance that allows me to say, "All right, you're here, I'm here, and this is how I'm going to deal with it."
Yeah. That's so beautiful. Keith, if someone feels overwhelmed right now, what would you want them to return to?
That they're not alone. That's what I want them to. I mean, everybody. I think, my opinion. I think everybody in this world feels overwhelmed at times,
Mhm.
and there are differing degrees of it, right? But it doesn't matter. Like if you feel overwhelmed, you feel overwhelmed for your reasons and your reasons only. I feel overwhelmed for my reasons and my reasons only. It's still feeling overwhelmed, is the point. And what I'm getting at is knowing that others feel this way as well, you're not alone, could be, this is just what I do. I'm like, I'm not the only person in this beautiful world that is feeling this way. And sometimes we think that way, like, oh my gosh, does anybody else feel the way I feel? Well, the reality is, yes, they do.
Mhm.
You are
Mhm.
not alone. Nobody is unique in this regard. We're all going down on this journey of human existence, and there will be millions of people that are going to experience the same things that you're going to experience. It's okay, is my point.
I love that. And as you said, reach out to someone and just open up a little bit, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
That might really help.
Have that network of people that even if you don't have a
Yeah.
network of people, just knowing it's okay. And this is why, boy, we can go to a whole other podcast of this. This is why I
You'll be
have
back.
I have concerns over, the younger generations because
Mm.
of what technology is doing these days.
Yeah.
It is actually moving us away from that human interaction that you grew up with, I grew up with. We know how to handle it
Yeah.
and interact with people. They don't, and that's why you're seeing, just in the news recently, Spain is going to prohibit phones for kids under
Mhm.
16 years old. There's a reason they're doing that, because
Mhm.
they're noticing they're not able to connect with people,
Mhm.
and there's some psychological problems happening that way.
Mhm. So the problem is not so much the phone, but the social media on it, right?
Yeah, that, that
If they
that's
would
exact
only call, that would be fantastic.
that's exactly right. Yeah, my son, as at times growing up, he said, "Dad, I wish I grew up when you grew up."
Mhm.
And I'm like, well, why? Because I feel the same way about you. Like, I wish I had all this cool stuff and all.
Mhm.
He goes,
Mhm.
no, because getting to know people and connecting with people, you guys naturally did that because,
Mhm.
and he realized it because you had to.
Mhm.
Now, people hide behind all this stuff, and you're not really making a human to human connection, and it's really
Mhm.
difficult. And I thought, wow, I'm really proud of you because that is that is pretty deep when you think about it. When a
Mhm.
teenager is telling you something like that,
Mhm.
around they wish they were forced into a situation to have human conversations with people in real time. That's what he was saying to me, essentially.
Because your son understood something. Our age, we see it as just as a normal, as a given, right? But for somebody from today's generation, they look at, we went through school of hard knocks.
Yes.
We
Yes.
learned how to communicate. We learned how to have conflicts or not. But we actually were forced by life to learn those life skills, which the new generation will pay bitterly for it, very bitterly. Because it's not just that they don't know what to do, they wouldn't know how to do it, even if you would take social media away and put them into rooms.
Yes.
They will probably
Yes.
go into depression on site.
Yes. Yes.
That's the craziness.
I've actually had to teach people, different generations, how to make a phone call,
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
right?
Yeah,
And
not
I'm not surprised
surprised.
either. I'm not
Yeah,
surprised either, right?
we're
No,
living
I'm
in
not surprised.
crazy, interesting times at the same time.
Yeah, and then it's exciting times too, right? Because
Oh,
there's so
absolutely.
much cool stuff with technology these days. But
Yeah,
there's a again back to a balance, right? There's always a
yeah,
balance, and we just have to, as a human, figure out what that balance is for ourselves, and then we
yeah,
can exist in any world.
yeah. With that, thank you so much for this conversation, Keith. It's been a great pleasure.
Yeah, Marcus, it's been fun. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. This was Remembering the Forgotten, a conversation held in clarity, not performance. If something in this exchange shifted how you see, let it stay with you. A few quiet pointers are waiting below.